Hey there. So some of you know that I love using metaphors and analogies to help give more of a sense of what it is to live this burgeoning life of consciousness and awakening. And all of my favorite teachers use analogies and metaphors, again, to help bring some language, to bring some form and understanding to the formless, to consciousness. And that's what I have found to be some of the most valuable teachings that I receive from my teachers, is when they help, bring this consciousness into understanding through analogies and metaphors. And one of the ones that has been really percolating recently for me, it's been really fun to play with and to feel into myself to help me navigate this consciousness, is the analogy of self-driving cars, and how there is a new technology that is available now that didn't used to be available. And as it becomes more perfected, as it becomes more familiar, we may start to find that there's a trust or a faith in it. However, we've been driving for a long time, and to surrender that to this emerging technology is going to take some time. It is going to need a time of transition. So the analogy is that the self-driving technology is like consciousness. Consciousness is emerging, it's growing, it's revealing itself more and more as unconditional love, let's say. It's just the true consciousness that we are is revealing itself. And we are asked in our practices often to let go and surrender to that. And what is letting go and surrendering is the conditioned self. And it's letting go to the unconditioned truth of what we are. The conditioning is, of course, our programming and all the things we've learned, ways we've learned to identify ourselves as worthy or unworthy or some level of that. Lovable, not lovable, safe, unsafe, and all the ways that we have been conditioned. That conditioning is typically driving our lives. It is what is making us steer in certain directions and move in certain directions and avoid certain obstacles that we imagine in the road ahead of us. So, in our practice of starting to recognize and realize a higher consciousness, a more expansive, loving consciousness that we are becoming more familiar with something that can drive, something that could actually move us and navigate us and steer us through life with a lot more alacrity and grace than our conditioning. But it takes a while. It takes a while for that faith to be known, to be realized. So if I were to put you or me, certainly if I was placed in a self-driving car that was totally, that the technology was proven, actually, that it was a part of our lives, and that I had seen videos or I'd heard other people and they've said, oh no, self-driving cars, they totally work. Like, you don't have to worry about it. And if you put me in a self-driving car today and I was unfamiliar with it, I had not grown a faith in it, and you said, oh no, you can take your hands off the wheel. In fact, you can get in the back seat and you'll be fine. It'll take care of everything. Not a chance. I would be sitting in that front seat with my hands at the ready, because this is unfamiliar. But what we start to learn in our meditative practice is, as we become more familiar with our unconditioned self that was prior to our conditioning, when that starts to reemerge and reveal itself and blossom and bloom, as we become more familiar with that, we start to recognize that that drives life quite fine. And in fact, it drives life with more alacrity and grace than our conditioned self ever did. So the analogy again being sitting in the self-driving car, wouldn't it be wild if after a while you're just sitting back going, dang, this thing is actually driving beautifully. In fact, it drives more beautifully than I ever did. When I imagined fears in the road and I did the sharp turns and drove myself into a ditch and felt threatened by the other cars and drove people off the road. And hard braking and swerving. You start to recognize that the conditioning actually drives really erratically. And the consciousness drives beautifully. So it can take a while, and that's part of the recognition that I'm really finding, is that there's a patience and a love and a faith in relaxing and surrendering and realizing that is a process, it's a practice, and that it can take years, and typically does. It typically takes years from the initial start of awakening into the recognition or the realization that there is an unconditioned self that has been veiled by our conditioning. For that initial awakening to come into a harmonious faith with that takes years. It's going to be years before I'm going to take my hands completely off the wheel and ultimately just get in the back seat and enjoy the view and enjoy the ride and be able to love more fully and play more fully and create more fully because the vehicle's being driven just fine. Adyashanti is one of my favorite teachers, and he comes from a Zen background. And he was speaking the other day about how 5 to 10 years till that harmonious faith really comes into full maturity. And that's within a Zen community, that's within a Zen community of 24-hour-a-day practice of mindfulness and presence and faith. So perhaps we can recognize that hesitation to surrender not as a failing, but as a natural aspect of learning to come into a faith with a burgeoning consciousness that is starting to reveal itself and that we're coming into a faith with, and recognizing it drives beautifully. Yeah. So, have fun with that. Enjoy. Thank you. Much love. Blessings. Enjoy the ride.